Broadcast for shooters, hunters, and gun enthusiasts. This is the Firearms Radio Network.
Hi, I'm Alex Kincaid, and welcome to 3G Law Guts, Grit, and Guns podcast. Many thanks to Firearms Radio Network for giving me the opportunity to speak to you about the gun laws in our country. I've been referred to as Idaho's Second Amendment attorney, and that's because I spend much of my time drafting and assisting people in this state to pass pro-gun legislation. I also speak to members of our community about the gun laws in this country. And most of my clients are gun owners or gun businesses. Most people are shocked to find out that there are over 20,000 gun laws on the books across the United States of America. Most gun owners would choose not to violate those laws, but the problem is there are so many of them that most responsible gun owners just don't know what they are. Most lawyers don't know what the laws are. We have to go look them up. We have to research the laws in each individual state when we're addressing a transfer or possession issue or the use of deadly force and what's lawful and what isn't. So I counsel people about when they can lawfully possess a firearm, who they can give that firearm to, what to do if it's going to go across state lines, if they're traveling, if they're selling, if they're giving it away, what things can and cannot be done without violating one of these many gun laws. So we're going to talk about the laws in this podcast. People always ask me why the connection to firearms, and I was one of those lucky kids who grew up in a household where we had guns in the home. My dad was a police officer, and he taught me how to shoot when I was 5 years old, and I've carried that hobby with me throughout my life. I still shoot. I love to go out and do competitions and train more and learn more about my firearms and try out new ones. So later in my life, I became a prosecutor, and during that period of time, I was actually threatened by people who were involved in some of my cases, and I took my level of training up a notch at that point. I learned how to properly carry my firearm, how to use it in a self-defense situation. I studied, I trained with some of the best people I could find, and I also had some experiences where I prosecuted homicides, and I've been on the scene of the homicide, leading the major crimes team and helping to determine if the shooter lawfully used deadly force to defend their lives. So that experience has given me the ability to talk to my clients about when they can use their firearm legally in self-defense and take the life of another human being to save their own or to save the life of a loved one, and what to do in the aftermath of a shooting. Later on, I was actually physically attacked in my own home, and I know the feeling of relying on my firearm to defend my life, because there was a period of time after that attack where I felt like I wouldn't be able to sleep at night, but for the fact that I knew how to use my Remington 870 and the Glock that I had nearby. I also learned more about training and planning and preparing to defend yourself in your own home. I tell people your home is one place where you can always have some certainty about what you would do. You may not have as much predictability out on the street, but in your home you can plan and prepare to a certain degree. You can talk to your family members, you can talk to your children, to your spouse, and you can talk about what you would do if somebody broke in and attacked you. So what happened at the national level with gun laws in 2013? First and foremost, people think of Dianne Feinstein's proposed new assault weapons ban. We had a ban from 1994 to 2004 that restricted certain types of firearms from being sold to individuals who were not law enforcement or military. And Dianne proposed, let's make this even more restrictive. Let's put more firearms on the list, all coming about by exploiting the murder of children in Newtown. And the Obama administration was behind this, calling for common sense gun control. But as gun owners know, the places with the strictest gun control laws in our country also have the highest crime rates. There is no common sense gun control that has worked in the past, and it's not going to work in the future. Why? Because criminals don't obey the laws. What we did see were many executive actions, 23 originally, and a few stragglers following, that came out and have been President Obama's way of trying to implement laws since Dianne Feinstein's proposed ban failed. People ask me, because some of the effects that are coming out, one of the biggest effects that is resulting in individual people going, what is going on and why are you asking me this, is that we now have doctors asking patients if they have guns in the home. And my clients are asking why, and do I have to answer this? They're actually afraid they're going to get into trouble for not responding to that question. And the right behavior is to say, I'm not going to answer that question. And if you continue to insist that that's part of my medical treatment, I'm going to find another doctor. We had another rule issued towards the end of the year, or an executive action rather, that is a proposed rule change at the ATF level pertaining to gun trusts. Gun trusts have been used for a long time now by people who are buying National Firearms Act firearms, and the most common kinds of firearms that fall under that act are the suppressors, the full autos, the short-barreled rifles, short-barreled shotguns. People who want to acquire those kinds of firearms frequently do so by using a gun trust. Why? Because a gun trust will allow their spouse or another family member who is of legal age to lawfully be at home with that firearm and not break the law. If you buy a National Firearms Act firearm in your own name, no one else can be in possession of it. And if you leave it at home and you go to work and you leave it with your spouse is now in possession of it unless you have it locked in a safe somewhere and they don't know the combination. And that's ridiculous. So I have lots of clients who create gun trusts because they're worried about becoming incapacitated or dying, and they want to pass their guns, and they want to make sure that their family members can be in lawful possession of any of their firearms in the home that are National Firearms Act firearms. Maybe they have an adult child who wants to go take one out and shoot it one day at the range. A gun trust allows them to do that. I haven't heard of any instances where a criminal has created a gun trust, gone to a dealer, purchased lawfully a National Firearms Act firearm, like a suppressor or a machine gun, and put it in the name of a gun trust, and then it's been out on the street and used in a crime. In fact, none of the lawfully registered machine guns have ever been traced to a crime in this country, being a homicide or a crime against another person. So what this new rule is proposing, and there's a lot of confusion about this, so I'm going to talk about it for just a minute, is that anybody who is named as a trustee in a gun trust is now going to have to get law enforcement signature, be photographed, and be fingerprinted before that person can lawfully be in possession of these National Firearms Act firearms. And this rule, we were thinking it was going to come out early January. It has now been delayed until June. But I want people to hear that the purpose and the value in gun trusts is not going away. It's just that when you create one, you may have to be photographed, fingerprinted, and get law enforcement signature before you can acquire a suppressor, a full auto, or a short-barreled rifle, short-barreled shotgun. So it's an extra hoop, it's an extra step, and in my home state of Idaho, it's an annoyance, but it's not prohibitive. For my friends in Washington, this can be a big problem because some law enforcement officials simply refuse to sign the paperwork that you have to send to ATF in order to acquire these firearms. So it's a back-end way of the federal government saying, hey, you know what, we're not going to allow you in these locations where we actually have some people who are implementing common sense gun control and not allowing citizens to own firearms that come under the National Firearms Act by refusing to sign paperwork. We're gonna close up this little way that people can still acquire those firearms, because with a gun trust, right now, you don't have to get that law enforcement signature. If you live in Washington, you create a gun trust in a county where your law enforcement is not friendly to firearms, then you can create a gun trust and still get your suppressor. If this rule is implemented, that could be a problem for people. So what else happened in 2013 at the national level? We saw The NRA teaming with the ACLU, that was pretty interesting. We now have lead bullets. We have a deadline on the manufacture of lead bullets. The UN Small Arms Trade Treaty, that's a frightening thing. It was signed by Secretary John Kerry, but we don't know if that's going to be ratified by the Senate. And if you want to read more about that, there's a lot of information on that trade treaty. It will affect you. Don't think it won't. It will. It is going to impose new regulations on the import and export of everything from battle tanks to light weapons to ammunition. And I've talked to my friends who are in the industry. Some of the ammunition manufacturers say they are already feeling the effects because certain equipment is restricted from import. So worse than anything we saw at the national level were the laws that were passed in individual states. So let's talk about a few of those. And the three that probably had the worst laws passed were Connecticut, Colorado, and New York. And Connecticut, of course, was already one of the 5th highest states in the country for restrictive gun control laws. So they already banned assault weapons, but they took it up a notch. And in fact, we saw Vice President Biden make a special trip there. And I quote, he said, "Would it be that every governor in the country acted as swiftly, decisively, and as courageously as you have? I believe the price to be paid politically will be to those who refuse to act, who refuse to step forward because America has changed on this issue." And so here we have representatives from the federal government losing at the federal level, but pushing their agenda at the state level in states where we have liberal governors. Fortunately, my home state of Idaho isn't one of those states, but some of the things that came out here were really just onerous in terms of whittling away our Second Amendment. And in Connecticut, we have now, in that state, over 100 specific models of so-called assault rifles that are banned. When we had the federal assault rifle ban in effect from 1994 to 2004 at the federal level, rifles with more than one cosmetic feature. Of course, gun owners know these features don't affect the deadliness of a firearm, but they make a rifle look scary. And Connecticut said, if you just have one of these features, if you have a telescoping stock or a pistol grip, this is now more deadly than any other kind of rifle, and we're going to put it on the list. It's banned. We have in Connecticut a magazine ban on any magazines that can hold more than 10 rounds. And if you violate these new laws, you will be guilty of a Class D felony. What's really interesting is that in 2011, a rifle caused one of 129 murders in the great state of Connecticut, and a shotgun caused one of those 129 murders in the state of Connecticut. And in 2010, there were 132 homicides in Connecticut, none by a rifle, 1 by a shotgun, and 22 by a knife. Now, again, having prosecuted homicides, I know very well that knives can often be deadlier than firearms, but let's ban some pretty cool looking rifles because they're black and scary, and it's just another way for the government to take guns away from us. Lots of my estate clients have amazing collections of firearms that have been passed down for generations, and what Connecticut has done now is required a background check and registration for all transfers. This is going to affect even a father who passes down a shotgun to his son. Background check and registration. Another state that passed some harsh gun control laws was Colorado. The magazines can be a little bit bigger there, but anything over 15 rounds and you are breaking the law. Colorado also has implemented universal background checks for any firearms transfer, except they at least made an exception for transfers between immediate family members. So a little exception there that Connecticut didn't consider. Other states, of course, passed similar laws, and now let's talk about a really fun one, which was New York. Governor of New York, Governor Cuomo, he wanted a new gun ban, and he said, I quote, confiscation could be an option. So what we saw was 1 month after Sandy Hook, laws were passed. The SAFE Act, Securing Ammunition and Firearms Enforcement Act. And that law has made it so that I, for one, don't ever want to travel to the state of New York. It bans magazines holding more than 7 rounds. Residents have 1 year to sell or give away out of state any magazines that hold more than 7 rounds. If you don't, it's a misdemeanor. Of course, there's a so-called assault weapons ban, and the assault weapons ban adds that one cosmetic feature is enough. Just like in Connecticut, you have one feature on your rifle and it is now an assault weapon. There's a list of features that would apply. All assault weapons have to be sold or registered with the state police, or you are committing a misdemeanor in the state of New York. Interesting facts about New York: of the 769 people who were killed in New York in 2011, only 5 were killed by a rifle of any type. That's fewer people than were killed by strangulation. And people in law enforcement know this. They know that strangulation has been for years the #1 cause of death of women in a domestic violence situation, for one thing. That's why states are pushing to make strangulation a felony. That's a good cause. But only 5 homicides by a rifle of any type. In New York, you're also going to have to register every gun purchase. There will be a registration system with the state police, in addition to the laws that we already have at the federal level. So one other interesting feature of the SAFE Act is that counties who used to give lifetime gun permits to residents are now forced to make those permits renewable every 5 years, and there are increasing fees, so it's going to get more and more expensive for people to exercise their Second Amendment rights in the state of New York. There are universal background checks, of course, and some mandatory storage laws. So just a few things that happened around the country in 2013 with the gun laws. From another perspective, we did see some states pass some good laws. And by good laws, I mean things that are pro-Second Amendment, that help people exercise their Second Amendment rights with less rules, less regulation, less fear of breaking the law. A couple of states now have constitutional carry, which means there's no permit required if you want to carry your firearm concealed. If you're a law-abiding citizen, why not? Why can't you go out in public with it concealed? You're not a criminal. We had some states pass Firearms Freedoms Acts that would protect the firearms that are within the state and that have not been in commerce, and therefore some states were saying if the federal system passes legislation that is going to make conduct illegal pertaining to certain kinds of firearms, we, the people of this state, say we aren't going to enforce those laws. And in fact, a few states took it a step further and said, if we have federal agents come in and try to enforce any laws that we deem to be violative of the Second Amendment, we're going to prosecute those agents. So some interesting things happened, and it's not all gloom and doom, but it should make you think a little bit about taking action this year. We're starting a new year, there are new bills coming out, and in another podcast we're going to talk about some of the things that are being proposed across the country to help protect our Second Amendment rights. And specifically within the state of Idaho, we have several bills that are being circulated that already have legislative sponsors, and we're hoping to do some good things in the state to protect gun owners and gun rights.
This has been a production of the Firearms Radio Network. You can find more information at firearmsradio.tv.